Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. Carl Jung. Joe Rogan sits across from a guest. Could be a scientist. Could be a comedian. Could be a conspiracy theorist. Could be a politician. He leans forward, takes a sip of whiskey, and asks a question. Not a gotcha question. Not a question designed to make himself look smart. Just genuine curiosity. Wait, so help me understand this. And for 3 hours, they talk. No commercials, no time limits, no script, just conversation. This simple format has made Joe Rogan one of the most influential people in media. More listeners than cable news networks, more trust than legacy journalists, and more controversy than almost anyone else alive. To his supporters, he's the last honest voice. Someone willing to ask questions everyone else is afraid to ask. To his critics, he's dangerous. Spreading misinformation, platforming extremists, confusing millions of people. But here's what's interesting. Both sides are responding to the same archetype. The trickster, the boundary crosser. The one who asks questions that make institutions nervous. In our previous videos, we've explored shadow possession, integration, and persona construction. Elon possessed by his darkness. Mike Tyson learning to integrate it. Andrew Tate weaponizing his persona. Today, we're looking at something different. The trickster. An archetype Carl Jung identified as essential to psychological and cultural health. The one who breaks rules, crosses boundaries, and tells truth through chaos. This is Joe Rogan's story. And understanding it means understanding why curiosity itself has become controversial. Before we can understand Joe Rogan, we need to understand the trickster. Carl Jung identified the trickster as one of the fundamental archetypes, not good or evil, not hero or villain, something more complex. The boundary crosser, the rule breaker, the one who operates outside normal structures. In mythology, the trickster appears everywhere. Loki in Norse mythology, Anansi in African stories, Coyote in Native American tales, Hermes in Greek myth. They all share common traits. They're clever, unpredictable, sometimes helpful, sometimes destructive, always chaos. But here's what's important. The trickster serves a function. When societies become too rigid, too certain, too controlled, the trickster appears to break the rules, to ask forbidden questions, to expose what everyone knows but nobody says. The trickster isn't interested in being right. The trickster is interested in what's hidden, what's suppressed, what everyone's agreed not to talk about. And that's why the trickster is always controversial. Because asking questions threatens people who've already decided on the answers. Exploring ideas threatens people who've already chosen their ideology. Curiosity threatens certainty. In our Shadow Self video, we talked about how the parts we reject don't disappear. They go underground. They become the collective shadow, the things society doesn't want to acknowledge. The trickster's job is to drag those things into the light. Not gently, not politely, through chaos, through controversy, through asking the questions everyone else is too afraid to ask. And that's exactly what Joe Rogan does. Maybe not consciously, maybe not deliberately, but functionally, he operates as a cultural trickster. And the reaction to him, both positive and negative, tells us everything about what our culture is suppressing. Joseph James Rogan, born August 1967, Newark, New Jersey. Parents divorced when he was 5. Moved around. Boston, Florida, Newton, Upper Falls. Raised by his mother. Didn't know his father. Another absent father story, like Andrew Tate, like Mike Tyson, But Rogan's response was different. He didn't become a fighter to prove dominance. He became a comedian to understand chaos. Stand-up comedy is trickster training. You stand on stage, alone, and you try to make people laugh by saying things they're not supposed to say, by crossing boundaries, by exploring taboo, by finding truth in the uncomfortable. Rogan started doing stand-up at 21. Terrible at first, like everyone. But he kept going. Boston comedy scene, New York, LA, learning the craft, learning how to take an audience to the edge without falling off. Then Fear Factor, 2001 to 2006. He's the host watching people eat bugs and face their terrors. He's not the contestant. He's the observer, the narrator, the one pointing out the absurdity while it's happening. This is trickster positioning. Not inside the game, not outside it. On the boundary, watching, commenting, laughing at the chaos. Then UFC commentary, 1997 to present. He's calling fights, explaining technique, getting excited when something unexpected happens. Again, not the fighter, the observer, the translator, the one who helps you see what you're watching. Notice the pattern. Comedian, reality show host, sports commentator, always the outsider looking in, never the establishment, never the expert in a suit telling you what to think, just a guy watching the same thing you're watching and trying to understand it out loud. This is the foundation. Before the podcast, before the controversy, just a comedian who never stopped asking questions and never pretended to have all the answers. And then, 2009, he starts a podcast, just talking to his friends. No plan, no sponsors, no agenda, just curiosity. And that's when everything changed. The Joe Rogan Experience launches December 2009. First guest, comedian Brian Redban. They sit in Rogan's house, smoke weed, talk about whatever. No script, no structure, just conversation. Nobody cares. It's just another podcast in a sea of podcasts. But Rogan keeps doing it, multiple times a week. Comedians, fighters, scientists, weirdos, anyone interesting. And slowly, people start listening. Not because it's polished, because it's real. Here's what makes it different. Most media in 2009 is sound bites, 7-minute cable news segments, edited interviews with predetermined narratives, everything packaged, everything controlled. Rogan does 3-hour conversations, unedited, no commercials in the middle. Just two people talking until they run out of things to say. And this format, this simple choice to just let conversations happen, it's revolutionary. Because when you talk to someone for 3 hours, you can't maintain a persona. The mask slips. The real person emerges. The contradictions show. Traditional media hates this, because traditional media is about control. Controlling the narrative, controlling the message, controlling what people think. Long-form conversation is about exploration. You don't know where it's going. Neither does the host, neither does the guest. It's chaos, and chaos reveals truth that controlled environments hide. As we explored in our Kanye West video, persona is the mask we wear for the world. Most interviews are persona talking to persona, carefully managed, carefully scripted. Rogan's format breaks the persona. By hour 2, you're not performing anymore. You're just talking, and that's when it gets interesting. By 2015, the Joe Rogan Experience is one of the biggest podcasts in the world. Millions of downloads per episode. Guests ranging from Elon Musk to Bernie Sanders to Alex Jones to neuroscientists to comedians to MMA fighters. And the criticism starts. He platforms dangerous people. He doesn't push back enough. He's spreading misinformation by asking questions. This is the trickster being punished for chaos, because asking questions is only allowed if you're asking the right questions. Exploring ideas is only okay if you're exploring the approved ideas. Rogan's sin isn't that he believes conspiracy theories. It's that he's curious about them. And curiosity, in a world that demands certainty, is treated like a crime. 2020. COVID-19 pandemic. The world shuts down. Fear everywhere. Governments issuing mandates. Media pushing unified narratives. Experts telling everyone what to think. And Joe Rogan starts having conversations with doctors who question lockdowns, with scientists who question vaccine mandates, with people who have different opinions than the official story. He doesn't say, don't get vaccinated. He has conversations with people who have different perspectives. He asks questions. Why can't we talk about natural immunity? Why are we censoring scientists who disagree? Why does asking questions make you anti-science? The backlash is immediate. CNN calls him a horse dewormer guy for talking about ivermectin. Neil Young and Joni Mitchell pull their music from Spotify in protest. Doctors demand he be deplatformed. The White House says Spotify has a responsibility to stop misinformation. But here's what's interesting. Rogan isn't a doctor. He's never claimed to be. He's a comedian with a podcast asking questions. And the institutional response isn't to answer the questions. It's to silence them. This is the cultural shadow being exposed. The official story was, trust the experts. Don't ask questions. Anyone who disagrees is dangerous. And Rogan, just by being curious, revealed how fragile that story was. In our Andrew Tate video, we talked about persona construction. Tate deliberately builds a villain character. Rogan is different. He's not building anything. He's just asking questions. But in a culture that's decided questions are dangerous, that makes him the villain anyway. More controversies follow. He has on Jordan Peterson, labeled a far-right figure by some. He has on Bernie Sanders, labeled a far-left figure by others. He talks to Alex Jones about conspiracy theories. He talks to scientists about psychedelics. He talks to everyone. And the pattern is always the same. He asks questions. He explores ideas he admits when he doesn't know something. And institutions that depend on people not asking questions treat him like a threat. Because he is a threat. Not to truth. To control. The trickster's function is to expose what's hidden. And what's hidden in modern media is that most of it is persona. Carefully constructed narratives designed to make you think a certain way. Rogan's chaos breaks that. And the people invested in the persona are terrified. So why, despite all the controversy, do millions of people trust Joe Rogan more than traditional journalists? Because he's authentic. Not perfect. Authentic. He changes his mind. On air, in real time. He'll believe something one episode, then have a different guest who convinces him otherwise. And he'll say, I guess I was wrong about that. Traditional media can't do this. Because traditional media is about authority. And authority can't admit mistakes without losing credibility. But Rogan isn't claiming authority. He's claiming curiosity. And when you're curious, being wrong is just part of the process. You explore. You learn. You adjust. This is integration. As we explored in our Mike Tyson video, integration means accepting all parts of yourself. Your certainty and your doubt. Your knowledge and your ignorance. Rogan integrates his shadow on air. He admits his biases. I'm not a scientist, I'm an idiot. He talks about his mistakes. He explores ideas he's not sure about. He lets guests challenge him. This is the opposite of shadow possession. In our Elon Musk video, we saw someone driven by unconscious patterns. Rogan's different. He's conscious of his limitations. And that consciousness creates trust. People trust him because he sounds like them. Not because he has all the answers. Because he has the same questions. And in a world where everyone else is pretending to be certain, admitting you're uncertain is radical honesty. There's also this. Rogan can't be captured. Ideologically, financially, politically. He'll vote for Bernie Sanders and interview Trump. He'll criticize the left and criticize the right. He'll agree with a guest one episode and disagree with them the next. He's not consistent in his conclusions because he's not trying to be. He's exploring. This drives ideologues crazy. Because ideologues need you to be on a team. They need to know, is he one of us or one of them? The trickster refuses teams. The trickster operates in the space between. And that makes the trickster dangerous to anyone who profits from division. When Spotify paid him $100 million, critics said he'd be censored. He wasn't. When advertisers pressured him, he didn't change. When institutions demanded he deplatform certain guests, he had them back on. You can't capture the trickster. That's the whole point. So, what do we learn from Joe Rogan? First, the trickster is an essential archetype. Cultures need boundary crossers, people who ask uncomfortable questions, who explore forbidden ideas, who refuse to stay in their lane. Without the trickster, culture becomes rigid, dogmatic, controlled. Everyone agrees because they're afraid to disagree. Everyone follows the rules because asking why the rules exist is treated as rebellion. Rogan's function, whether he intended it or not, is to break that rigidity, to create space for questions, for doubt, for exploration. Second, curiosity is not the enemy of truth. It's the path to it. The institutions that fear questions are usually the ones hiding something. The experts who demand you stop asking are usually the ones who don't have good answers. Your shadow wants certainty. It wants to know who's right and who's wrong, who's good and who's bad, who to trust and who to fear. Because certainty feels safe. Doubt feels dangerous. But real growth happens in the uncertainty, in the questions, in the exploration. As we explored in our Shadow Self video, integration means making the unconscious conscious. That means asking questions you're afraid to ask. Exploring ideas you've been told are dangerous. Thinking for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. Rogan isn't perfect. He's wrong sometimes. He platforms people who probably shouldn't have platforms. He says things that age poorly, but he's also willing to explore, to change his mind, to admit when he doesn't know. And in a world that punishes uncertainty, that's valuable. Third, the trickster will always be controversial. Always. Because the trickster's job is to expose what's hidden. And people who benefit from what's hidden will always attack the trickster for exposing it. If everyone loves you, you're not doing the trickster's work. You're just reinforcing what everyone already believes. Rogan is controversial because he's asking questions that threaten structures of power. Not deliberately, not as some conspiracy, just by being curious. And the lesson isn't that you should agree with everything Joe Rogan says. The lesson is that you should be allowed to hear the questions and decide for yourself. Your shadow, your unconscious programming, your cultural conditioning, they all want you to stop asking questions, to accept the approved narrative, to trust the authorities, to stop being curious. The trickster says, keep asking, keep exploring, keep thinking. Mike Tyson learned to integrate his shadow by facing his darkness. Elon Musk is still possessed by his. Andrew Tate weaponized his persona. Joe Rogan, he's just asking questions. And somehow, in 2025, that's the most radical thing you can do. So the question for you is, are you willing to be uncertain, to explore ideas that might be wrong, to ask questions you're not supposed to ask? Or will you let your shadow's need for certainty keep you locked in the approved narratives? The trickster doesn't have the answers, but the trickster asks the questions that lead to them, and maybe that's enough. If you want to understand the trickster archetype and why figures like Joe Rogan matter, I recommend a few books. Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung is the foundation. How Archetypes Function. Why Culture Needs the Trickster. How the Unconscious Speaks Through Symbolic Figures. Trickster Makes This World by Lewis Hyde is the definitive work on the trickster across cultures, art, mythology, creativity, and chaos. How trickster figures create culture by breaking its rules. Essential reading, The Trickster and the Paranormal by George P. Hansen explores the trickster in modern contexts. How boundary crossing and chaos relate to power structures. Weird book, but brilliant. Thinking. Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is about cognitive bias and how we think. Relevant because Rogan's questions often expose our biases. Understanding your own thinking makes you less susceptible to manipulation. The Fourth Turning by Neil Howe and William Strauss is about generational cycles and cultural chaos. Rogan references this book a lot. It explains why certain periods in history produce trickster figures. We might be in one now. All links are in the description. Some are affiliate links, which means if you buy through them, it supports this channel at no extra cost to you. I only recommend books I've read and believe are valuable. If you don't have time to read full books, I use Blinkist for 15-minute summaries. Audible is also great for audiobooks. Links to both in the description. If Joe Rogan's story made you think, let me know in the comments. Do you think curiosity has become controversial? Are questions dangerous? Or is asking questions the only way to find truth? And if you found this valuable, hit the like button. It helps more people find these videos. Subscribe for weekly deep dives into psychology, shadow work, and the patterns that run our lives. New videos every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Next week, we're looking at Conor McGregor, the fighter who became a businessman, the competitor who became a character, when persona becomes more real than the person underneath. The final video in our Shadow Icons series. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.